Hey everybody, welcome in. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Kieran Blakemore on the relationship side of MCIM, and I'm joined here today by our Director of Strategic Services, Stuart Chambers.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
First and foremost, we want to wish everyone out there a happy Valentine's Day, and more importantly, Stuart and I, we hope that we serve as your reminder that it is Valentine's Day. So if you've forgotten, put something on your calendar. Stuart and I are excited to expand on the webinar series with today's topics, which are focused on managing risks, capital planning, and capital projects, all within MCIM. But before we get there, we want to go over some housekeeping items. Throughout today's webinar, you can ask questions by clicking the word balloon in the right-hand column of the GoToWebinar. We'll be taking breaks in the middle and at the end to answer any questions you may have. We prefer to address questions and comments during this session, but if we run out of time, we'll follow up with an email after the webinar. You can email us anytime at results@mcim24x7.com. That's results@mcim24x7.com. Here at Fulcrum, we love to hear customer feedback and understand how we can innovate on your digital experiences, truly bringing together that single pane of glass. Today, you're really going to see the strength and interplay of the MCIM ecosystem as our team goes through their demos. Those team members are queued up and ready to go, but before we get there, I'm going to pass it to Stuart to set the stage.
All right. Thank you, Kieran. And I get excited about this webinar, everybody, because it talks about this annual process of identifying risks, going through capital planning and then capital projects. A lot of organizations know this is coming each year, but it's still a headache for them. It still involves many spreadsheets, many emails, back and forth communications, and headaches. And our customers love to tell us about that. So I'm very excited to show you the solution that we have today, right? Which is the way MCIM grabs risks from your inspections from all sources, moves those into capital planning and approval, and then finishes by executing capital projects with them. So we're going to show you that full narrative and life cycle within the platform. I'm super excited to get started. So without further ado, let's send it over to Tyler to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Hello, everyone. This is Tyler here with MCIM, and today I'm going to walk you through a scenario where I'm going to assume the role of a facility manager who's just completed a facility condition inspection of my campus. I want to quickly walk you through what that assessment looks like, how I enter some of my ratings and supporting evidence for those inspection questions, and then show you two different ways that you can remediate the risks and opportunities that you find as a result of your inspection. The first will be covered by something that's part of our operational expenses, utilizing a work order that I can send directly to my site technicians. And the second would be for a longer term project or a larger ticket item where I would be generating a risk and attaching an estimate to my risk, whether that's using RS means data, whether that's using an actual quote from a vendor. But the nice thing is it's going to kind of show you that process of how I'm able to track all of the opportunities that my facility has for improvements and risks that need remediated, and how I can utilize my capital planning tool down the road to make sure I'm addressing all of those issues in a timely and fiscally responsible manner. But to start with, I'm going to go ahead and click back into this assessment that I've got on my iPad here in front of me. The first thing you'll see here at the header are some information that's available, things like when I've started my assessment, the final due date, what its status is, and who our assignees are. But the main things that I want to delve into with you all today are as I unfold the envelopes down below here, where you can see my actual questions, ratings, and supporting evidence. So for example, in this first question, you can see I'm being asked about my facility entrance, and I provided some notes about what to look for in terms of how I'm rating this facility and where damage might be located. I've given this a good rating. You can see I've entered that in there. I've added a comment about the upgrade project from last year, and then attached a photo of what my facility looks like there. As we scroll down to parking service, you can see again the same sort of thing there. But for this one, I want to point out that I've given it a fair rating. If I were to go in and change that rating from fair to poor, the comment box that's below here, where I've got this test entered in here, becomes required at that point in time. We're able to set up configurations in the background so that if you were to say that any specific value is considered a bad value or a poor answer, you're able to force whoever's doing your assessment to enter a comment at that time. It's a helpful way to make sure we're guiding our technicians and our assessors to inputting good data and giving us context for why they rated something the way that they did. What I really want to touch on today, though, if I scroll down to my grounds and utilities, is this first question about landscaping. In this scenario, I've got a tree that was damaged by a recent storm. It's not actually blocking any of my operations. It's not a overt safety hazard to my team at present, but it's still something that I want to address very quickly. And so what I can do with this is utilize the blue icon with the little wrench that I've got there next to my question. And that's going to immediately drop me into my work order creation flow, where I can set up some work for my site team to go out and remediate this tree issue that's on our campus. So in order to set up this work order, I'm going to go ahead and enter a quick description. Please contact our vendor to remove. I'm going to assign a priority of this to medium. It's not quite top of my mind, but it's still important. I'll fill in my category of landscaping. And since this is important, I'd like for it to be remediated pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and say my plan start is for tomorrow. So I'd like my technicians to get on this right away. Once I've gotten some basic information in there, I can go ahead and just save this. And now when we look at that question there, you can see that we have one work order associated to it. So that way, if I'm going back through and reviewing this later on down the road, I always have that tie back to my original assessment, and I can follow up on the work order status from there. So that's the first way to go and remediate an issue that you found during your FCI. The second one that I mentioned utilizes a risk and has a little bit more of an involved process. So for that, I'm going to utilize this question about utility boxes and transformers. In this scenario, my transformer 2B has reached its end of useful life and needs to be totally replaced. And so for this, I know I'm obviously going to need some quotes. I'm going to need to kind of plan out this work effort. So instead of utilizing work order, I'm going to go ahead and click on the other icon that I have there in orange and go ahead and immediately generate a risk, which I can then attach an estimate to and kind of work it through its path in our capital planning project, in our capital planning module. Once I've got this risk up here, I can go ahead and put in my category. I'm going to say electrical for this one here, since it's a transformer replacement. This is a high priority for me. And I'm going to leave my estimated cost blank in here for right now, because I do want you all to get a chance to see how I add in my ROM estimate utilizing some of our RS means data that's in the system. For request description, I'm just going to quickly throw in here transformer replacement. And once I've gotten that in there, I can add in more details. I just want to get this started, this process started, so I can show you all a good example. Once I've done that, it automatically allows me to add in my estimate right here. But I do want to show you all that in the desktop version, so I'm going to close that out. And now you're able to see when we scroll back down that just like we had one work order, now we can see that my utility box transformer question does have one risk associated to it as well. I'm going to pause here briefly and flip over to my desktop version and show you how I finish this assessment and add my estimate to my risk utilizing our desktop version. All right, so now that I completed my work in the field, I'm able to come back to my desktop and kind of close out and finalize some of my findings from my assessment. I'm going to go ahead and resume the assessment we were working on earlier. And the first thing you'll see is that I have this assessment has been completed but not yet marked as ready for review. This lets me know that it's still in my bucket, it's still in my queue of things to disposition. And so if I want to pass that on to my supervisor and have them able to review it and formally close it out, I can very easily just go in and click this checkbox right here that says ready for review and save that assessment. Once I've done that, I'm able to kind of go through and see a good view of what the information that I put into the system looks like. What you can see is though I do still have my link back to my estimate for my transformer replacement that we want to work on as well. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize that right now. That's going to open up the work request right here, the risk that we identified on our assessment. I'm able to go in here and scroll down to the bottom of my record page, where here you can see my estimate section. What I want to do with this, since I know that I have some RS means data that will help kind of prompt me on what my cost for a transformer replacement might actually be, I'm going to click Add from Catalog. You see a listing of our categories here. I'm going to choose electrical. And in my search box here, I'm just going to type transformer. And you'll see that I'm presented then with a list of options from RS means data for the total cost of both the product and the labor to totally replace my transformer. I'll say, for example's sake, that this is a 500 kVA unit that we need to replace. I'll add that to my estimate. So I can go ahead and add in some other information as well if I'd like, if I'm familiar with it. Say this is transformer replacement. This could be, I think we've got a crafty contractor's vendor in here that's going to go ahead and do that work most likely. And then I'm able to hit save. Once I've done that, I'm able to kind of easily see my estimate on here. And the nice thing is I can add additional estimates as well. So if I do start pulling in a lot of different vendor contracts, a lot of vendor quotes, I'm able to kind of showcase all of those different estimates right here on one record page, which allows me to kind of go through and choose what's the best option for me and my facility. Hopefully this provides you all some good insight on the assessment process and how we can generate either work orders or risks, depending on the nature of the risk that we identify during our inspection. I'm going to pass you guys back over to Stuart for the rest of the process.
All right, thank you, Tyler. So that was part one of the process around identifying risks through inspections, right? Be it at one site, hundreds of sites, or even the thousands of sites that you have in your portfolios. You can capture those risks. And now we're going to send it over to Dan, who's going to highlight how we collapse those risks down into capital projects that can be approved and then executed. So Dan, over to you.
Hi, I'm Dan, and I'll be assuming the role of the Senior Facility Manager. So I'll be reviewing the findings from our facility inspection that Tyler performed. I'll consider those different risks and bundle them into a capital project to be reviewed by our executive team. So what I want to start with is how we might view those different risks that were identified during that assessment, right? And those are found within our work request tab. So if I'm looking at my different work requests, I can see their description, their categorization, their status. And this is just that nice clean list view of that information. Here you can see the transformer replacement that Tyler had identified. So I'll go ahead and click in there. And again, we just get that 30,000 foot view of the details for this request. What's nice is we can see the pictures associated to them. We can see any estimates for the cost of replacement and its current status here on the page. But what I want to do is not look at these requests individually. I want to see them in a form where I can bundle them together and submit them ultimately for that capital project approval. So where might I do that? That would be done through our project management tool. And if I come here, type project management, right, we can see that project management tool here. I have it pulled up for us. And here you can see, just as that list view showed, I have my work requests here. However, we just have a different way of viewing them. This is in a card view, so I can see the pictures associated to that work request identified. I get some high-level information as to what site it lives at, any details about it, right? If I click on one of these, and for example, let's go down to the one that Tyler identified. Here I can see all that information that he populated when creating that request during the inspection. But now what I want to do, as I mentioned earlier, is bundle these together for a capital project to be considered, right? So what I'm going to do is click this multi-tile select, and I'll start selecting the projects that I want to bundle, or those work requests I want to bundle, into a project. And in this case, what I'm doing is finding all those exterior kind of risks or work efforts. So things like the parking lot needs some updates. Maybe there's a crack in the facade of the facility itself. I want to get those all bundled together, and I'm going to include those transformers in there as well. And here, as I select these, you can see on the right, I have my selected work requests. You can see the icons showing its various priority and just a short description again. But what I want to do is select a project. So let's go ahead and select a project. And I can see not only can I create a net new project within this tool right here, but I have some outstanding ones that I can add this to as well. And in this case, I have my facility exterior project. I'll go ahead and select that, and I can mass assign to the project. Great. So you can see here, all those different requests are now a part of that facility exterior project and can be considered for that review for capital planning going forward. At this point, I'm going to hand things over to David, where he can show you some of the analytics that support this capital planning and project management tool. So with that, thank you all so much. Take care.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. Before we pass it to David, we actually have some questions in the chat here. So Stuart and I are going to tackle those for you guys. So let's take a look here at the first question. What mobile devices can I use this on? Tablets, phones? Does it come with a mobile app? Yes, this is a question we actually get very frequently. We like to say MCIM is device agnostic. We're available on laptops, mobile devices, so your tablets, your smartphones, and we are available through an app on the App Store. Question number two.
Yeah, let me take number two. For these facility condition inspections, I have different portfolios with mixed use facilities. So are there templates I can use for the type of site I'm inspecting? That's actually a really good one. And the answer is yes. You do have the ability to template out your inspections, your annual inspections, your quarterly inspections, and you can even build templates by type. So if you have a retail facility that has a cash vault, if you have a data center facility, a corporate headquarters, of course, you might have different assessment questions for that. And yes, you can have those templates. So go for it, Kieran.
Cool, we have another one here. So some of my inspectors are vendors at some of my sites, but are my personnel at our major facilities. Can you guys handle both vendors and owners using this for inspections and estimates? This is a great question, and this is actually an intersection of a few areas within MCIM. We do have licenses available for both your internal users, as well as licenses available for any third-party vendors that you might be using. We leverage something called our vendor portal for that. And that's really a pared down view of work that's assigned out to those specific vendors. That's a great topic that we would love to take a deep dive with you on. So if you could reach out to us, send us an email at that results at MCIM24x7.com, and we're happy to take you through that process. This serves as another good reminder to keep putting your questions into the chat. We're happy to answer them as we go. We'll have one more Q&A session here at the end. That'll be after David and CJ. So at this point, I'm going to pass it to them.
Thanks, guys. My name is David Johnson. I'm going to be simulating the executive approval team overseeing the capital planning for my organization. So far, we've seen inspections getting conducted, the results of those inspections getting bundled into projects, and finally, we've seen those projects being submitted into my queue for approval. So now my team and I are ready to go through those items awaiting approval to decide which are going to be completed this year, which ones are going to say no to, and which ones we want to defer to a later year. So to oversee that process in our platform, we have the Capital Projects Risk and Planning tool. You're going to see on the left here that there are three main components to this tool. There's the portfolio summary, which is the view that you're seeing right now. There's the capital projects vetting pipeline, and the Approved Capital Projects tab. So starting with the executive summary, you're going to see all tasks that are currently in pipeline broken down into two distinct sections. The first is a view of all the capital projects that are currently unapproved. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to say that it's still early on in the year. Our capital plan submissions for next year are typically due in Q3, so we see a lot of capital projects being submitted. You can see that they're broken out by risk, so extreme, high, medium, or low. You can also see a breakdown of category. So is it electrical, mechanical, plumbing, etc. You can also see total cost of submitted capital plans by year, along with our total expenditures to date. Below that, you're going to see a second view on this page, which is a view into the projects that have already made it through the approval process and are currently being executed on. Again, it's still early in the year, so only a few of these projects have made it this far, but you can see, they're also broken out by priority as well as category and have a similar breakdown on associated costs. The other two tabs of this tool are going to drill down into finer detail around all of these projects. So now let's take a look at the capital projects vetting pipeline. To do that, I'm simply going to hover over this tab, click it. At the top of this tab, you're going to see the pipeline of requests. You're going to see that 34% of them are still in draft. They're working on getting the details and estimates put together, just like Tyler showed us earlier. 26 of those are in requested, so on and so on. As you go through and inspect, tens, hundreds, thousands of properties in your portfolio, tasks can be identified through a large number of avenues. With that in mind, we created the dashboard just below that. So were these entered in through assessments, like what we just saw Tyler do, or were they entered in through a call center or emails? Did one of my tenants submit it? Or was it an issue identified by one of my engineers while they were doing a tour? Our capital planning tool can take all of that data in from all of those sources, quantify it, and automatically drill down for you in the pipeline so that you can see those requests. Another great feature of this tool is going to be a table that outlines all the details associated with each risk in the capital plan. Keep in mind, all of this is drillable. So if you want to take a look at all of my projects in a specific status, so we will take the requested status, for example. Simply hover over it, click on it, and then the requested section of the funnel in MCIM will automatically drill down into the specific risks for your review. If you look a little further down into this window, you're going to see a comprehensive list of each picture submitted with the requests. So, for example, we'll take this transformer here. So I can click on this transformer, and I can see that it was submitted just a few days ago for a facility exterior project. Simply close out here. Now, to undo this, I can simply go back, click Requested again, and you can see that MCIM will automatically undo all of those filters. So lastly, I want to take a look at the execution of my capital projects. In order to do that, I'm going to click on the Approved Capital Projects tab. So these are all projects that have made it through and are clear to execute in the future. And this view is going to provide me a detailed look into the status of each project. I can see it broken down by capital plan year, as well as by which sites the projects are occurring at, and by category. And if we scroll down a little bit here, I can see all of the risks that have been identified in the initial inspection and how they've been bundled into projects, as well as how those projects stack up by category. Also, another very helpful tool, along the left side pane here, you're going to see the top project owners, along with their total allotment of revenue by project associated to them. So, for example, I can select Tripty here and see all of the projects that she is working on, where they stand, how much she's spent. And again, in just a moment, we're going to see CJ go through and step through a much more granular view of the project experience. But for all intents and purposes, Here you have an overall great top-level display of everything that is currently in the pipeline that the team still needs to approve to ensure that your deadlines are met, as well as a deep set of analytics about those projects that are currently approved and where they sit in the life cycle. So with that, that's going to wrap up the capital projects and risk planning. Thank you so much. Back to you guys.
Hey everyone, in this segment we're going to start looking at our capital project, and we're going to start moving this through its life cycle from getting our project and budget approved and then into actual project execution. So as you can see on screen, I have my project for transformer replacement, project number 00616 at Core Data Center 1, and we are in a draft status, so this will need to be approved before we can progress. And underneath you can see I have various estimates for transformer replacement. These estimates have all been accepted, and that has calculated our total into our original estimated cost in our budget section. So we don't have a final budget yet because we need to get full approval for this project first, and we're going to go ahead and step through that now. So we've pre-configured this approval process at our facility here so that when I submit for approval, my request for approval gets assigned to our corporate project approvers, and I can go ahead and approve on behalf of them. And at this stage, you'll see we've moved into an approved status that has finalized our original estimated cost into a final budget. In this example, those are the same. However, through approval, you may see additional budget items added or removed that could cause a difference in these values. For the sake of keeping it simple, our original estimated cost was approved, and that's become our final budget for this project. So at this point, we are in the planning phase, and you can see here I have these two requirements. One is that a project safety plan is attached, and a project Gantt schedule is attached. So in our planning phase, I won't be able to progress until I at least satisfy that a Gantt schedule for the project has been attached. So I'll go ahead to the Attachments tab, and it's calling out that I have these following requirements for all capital projects. I'll go ahead and select that I'm going to upload my Gantt schedule. I'll upload my file here. Great, and when I hit Save and Attach, the system is going to validate that I've attached the Gantt schedule, and you will see that listed here under Notes and Attachments for this project. Now that we've attached our schedule, we can move on to design, and in the design phase is when we're going to see that we're required to provide our project safety plan. So I'll mark this as current phase for design, and I'll go ahead and add the attachment for the safety plan now. And as I attach my project safety plan, we have now validated this document attached as well. You can see that it is listed here under Notes and Attachments, and we are now capable of moving out of design into construction since we've satisfied those requirements. So when I'm in the construction phase is when we most likely will start seeing some expenses starting to come in against this project. So as I'm constructing and as I'm working through the project itself, I'm going to want to come in here and make sure that I'm keeping a running log of all my expenses to date so that we can see where our unpaid expenses are, what is our expenditure to date, and then when the project is complete, what was our total spend, as it may be above or below or equal to our final budget, depending on how the project went. So I'll go ahead for the sake of example, and I will attach a new expense to this. It's going to ask me for my financial account, in which case I'll select this one, which is for our electrical construction projects. My total expense, let's say this is the first invoice they came in from the vendor providing the material for the project, and let's just, for the sake of example, say that that price was at $65,000. And we can list the status of this expense. So this may be, an expense, an invoice that we're expecting to receive, so it might be a draft expense. It could be a disputed expense, an unpaid expense, or a paid expense. We'll go ahead and just start listing this one as an unpaid expense, for example. Okay, and if I refresh my page really quickly, you can see that that's listed now as an unpaid expense, so we know that we've been invoiced, and once that expense is paid, we simply come back into our record here for this expense, and we will move it over from unpaid to paid, and we will see that that updates from unpaid expenses into expenditure to date. So as we go through this process, we'll continue logging expenses until we finally complete our construction project, at which point we are able to close out the project and list our total spend so that we have good data around how the project went, how close we were to budget, how under budget we might have been, or how over budget we might have been. I'll go ahead and log one final expense just to represent the general total of the project here, and we'll go ahead and say that that's going to be $210,000. We will list that as a paid expense. And as you can see, our expenditure to date now encompasses that amount. We've gone a little bit over, right? So our total spend, once we finalize and finish closing this project out, it will be a little bit over our original estimated cost and our final budget. And now we have the data to show exactly what happened throughout the project, listed down to the expenses against the original estimates. Thank you very much. This has been a brief tour through our project management and project execution tool. Thank you very much.
All right, terrific. Thank you, CJ. So there it is. That's the full arc, everyone, right? From risks identification through capital planning, bundling, and then through capital project execution. We've got a couple Q&A questions before we wrap up, so let's jump into those. One live one. For approved projects, does the system allow for tracking of completion progress? Short answer, yes, absolutely it does. That is one of those configurable fields on the project so that you can track completion. And one quick note before I turn it over to you, Kieran, I forgot to mention that there is going to be a recording of this after we are complete, everyone. So if people are having audio issues, there's going to be a downloadable and recorded copy of this entire thing. So a couple more questions. Kieran, this one you can handle.
Yeah, happy to tackle this one, Stuart. The question is, those pipeline analytics looked great, but we use different names for the capital planning phases at my company. Can y'all handle that? Yes, absolutely. That's the power of the MCIM platform. We're not customizing code on the back end. The way we like to tell this story is that we are clicks or configuration, not code, right? When you get to coding things on the back end, you can introduce some IT risks. So we actually, during the implementation and the transitions period, we work with you, you get a transitions analyst, and they will match your organizational items, like your capital plan phase names, and do all of that in the implementation period for you.
All right, looks like we got another live one that came in. Is there a PM performance view, overall PM performance against budget, schedule, and overall workload? Absolutely, there is. We have a lot of performance dashboards that we can build around capital projects or the pipeline. That is one that we can definitely follow up to the person that answered that question with some real live examples of what those look like. That's a great question. Kieran, I think you want to handle the last one?
Yeah, I think that actually, I don't see any more in the chat there, Stuart. So I think that brings us to a close. So first and foremost, Stuart and I, we want to thank the MCIM team for helping out today and sharing their demos, providing that insight on how MCIM can be leveraged, tackling those risks and opportunities, all the way from assessments to funding those efforts into your capital projects. And then we want to thank you, our guests, for joining us today. If you have any questions on what we've covered or any of the ways that MCIM can help you take action and change your business, please email us anytime at results@mcim24x7.com. Again, I'm Kieran with MCIM.
I'm Stuart, everybody.
And we thank you. And on behalf of the entire MCIM by Fulcrum Collaborations team, we thank you for joining us today on managing risks, capital planning, and capital projects. Cheers, everyone. Talk to you very soon.
Bye now.